like, I'll try that, I'll take this class. And so I did that. And then actually, while the class was going on, I wrote. It was all one-liners back then, and that's all I wrote. And that's why I was like, geez, I did 5-minute set, and in those 5-minute set, I did 50 one-liners. Can you imagine? I was like, this isn't going to be sustainable. You know what I mean? Like, how am I going to, like, geez, how will I ever build up to half an hour? This is nuts. I'll never be able to do
one-liners in half an hour.
Oh my goodness. I'll never remember them, let alone, like, how will I write them?
So welcome back, everyone. This is season 2, episode 24 of Shooting the Breeze. And tonight, my guest is Luke Lynndale. Luke is a comic based out of Toronto, and he produces so many different variations of shows. And I've been on a couple of them. So welcome to the show, Luke.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Good. So how have you been? How have you been these last few months?
Things are relatively good. Yeah, things are pretty good. I don't know if you know that. I think we met after this, but last January I had shingles.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I had shingles for 6 weeks. Started January 20th, anyways, and it ended right on the heels of the pandemic starting.
Oh, great!
And so, right before the pandemic started, I was living through my own personal hell. Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness, it was the most painful.
Yeah, because it's painful.
Oh, it was so excruciating. Apparently, it depends on the person. It like the length of it and the sort of like the intensity of it. And it felt like mine was worse than most. It seemed,
Oh my goodness! Because is that like that's like related to chicken pox or something?
Well, apparently, what happens is that you have the chicken pox. If you've had chicken pox, you have the virus, and it stays within you. And if you are overstressed, then it kind of ignites it.
Oh, wow.
And that's what triggers shingles.
Oh, wow. Oof.
Yeah. And so you can, there's a vaccine for it, which I would recommend for everyone to get. But once you had shingles, you have to wait for a year. So actually I could go now to get the vaccine. So once you've had it, and you can get shingles again because the virus is always in you.
Oh, God.
Unless you get the vaccine, right?
Unless you get the vaccine, but you have to wait a year after having it before you can get the vaccine.
Yeah, and I'd say it like the most brutal part, like from a pain perspective, was really it lasted probably in total like 4 months or so. Oh. But I'll say that it was only in the last maybe in December or maybe early January I started feeling almost like 100%. I'm not completely there. I've had like horrible knee pain and things like that, but I'm feeling much better now. So
I'm glad to hear that.
I'm better, even though the world's a mess. What's that?
Wow, I'm glad you're feeling better.
Yeah, I'm feeling much better health-wise.
Wow, that's a lot. That's a lot to have to deal with. Then right after, when you're starting to feel better, the world is set on fire.
The world fell apart. Exactly. Well, they say things happen in threes. That was my 3. That was my. I don't know. It's someone else's.
So
3.
you should be good.
I'm good for a while. Exactly.
Oh my goodness. So, exactly. I know you produce a lot of shows. You're based in Toronto. I lived there until 2 years ago. I was there for 17 years, but I only started comedy in Ottawa. I didn't start it out there.
Right.
What sort of shows have you been producing during the pandemic?
Well, during the pandemic, so I do improv with my dad. My dad's 87. We do improv together.
Oh,
we started producing a show, I want to say like 4 to 6 months ago. I can't remember when it started exactly, but we call it Life, and it's a variety show. So we've been doing that. We were doing it bi-weekly. We're doing it monthly at the moment. Then I have a show called the Luke Lynndale Show, which is also a variety show, but I have a guest host on that show. And I also have I have a 10-year-old daughter, and she's normally on that show as well. Huh. Where a lot of times it's an interview with her, or she'll speak about stuff going on. I mean, one of the things that was interesting with her was that she's had to be going to school there at one point all the time. So we had her kind of talking about that experience. I also was producing live, and I did it a few times. online, which is Women of Comedy. So
Yes.
I did that. And then I do the show I've been doing kind of most regular lately is a show called Luke Lynndale Does Your Jokes. So people come on, they do their material, and then I attempt to recreate it in my own style or my own way I don't literally repeat people's jokes, but that's a lot. Those are the things I'm doing online right now.
Okay, cool. How long have you been doing comedy?
Geez, well, it's a long story. I would say that it was being interrupted. I started doing stand-up in 1993.
Oh, wow. Okay. So a
And
while.
which a lot of people know in Canada will know Martha Chavez.
Yes.
Martha Chavez and I were in the same comedy class all the way back then in 1993 at the Comedy Works in Montreal.
In Montreal, because I was going to say, yeah, I know her from Montreal. I grew
Yeah,
up
yeah,
there. So.
yeah, exactly. And I moved to Toronto in 1995 and took courses at Second City. And between, I want to say, 98 to 2010, so those 12 years, I wasn't doing any comedy.
Okay.
So, and then I started back up again in 2010.
Oh, wow.
And I did a lot of improv. I've been doing since 2010. I've done improv the whole time, so I've done improv now for 11 years. And then I started stand up started back doing stand up in 2017. But I had done it.
Okay.
Had done it before, so there was what some people would call a break, or walking away from it or whatever. But it was more just, I don't know. I just lived life.
Something else. Yeah.
I just went with the flow.
That's what you got to do. That's what you got to do. So do you find that improv helps your stand-up or stand-up helps your improv? Or are they like totally different?
No, I mean, I think I'm one of the only kind of improviser or even stand-up that I see a lot of the similarities, or how the language is different, of course, like how people refer to like a callback, for example, in stand-up. You don't use that term in improv. It's like you have different terms there for that kind of thing. Like connections, people will call it connecting something from a previous scene, which at the end of the day, that's what a callback is.
Right.
In stand-up. But no, I find that for me, the improv, how it helps me the most in the stand-up is not to feel so much pressure on the being funny part. I feel like obviously when you're doing stand-up, you want to be funny. I mean, if someone's saying they're going to go see a stand-up show, obviously they want to laugh, right? Like, so
right.
You do need to have a focus on that. But in improv, they focus a lot on kind of establish, like, get a good ground, like a good base, which in stand-up you would call the setup. Like a good in improv, we call that mostly call that the platform, or like the the who, what, where, understanding where you're coming from. And then in improv there is more patience to get to the funny part, if that makes sense.
Okay, yeah, because with stand up you want to get to the punchline, set up punchline.
Well, yeah, I mean, I would say that I think that when you look at kind of stand-ups have been doing it for a long time, over time they become less concerned about hurrying to the funny part, right? They take their time to, I don't know, make it interesting, kind of establish where they're coming from and all that kind of stuff. And then you sort of reap the benefits. It's like you're planting a garden, right? And the more you take care of the soil you put in, the quality of the seeds, etc., the better the crop is. You could hurry that first part and still get reasonably good fruit, etc. Or if you don't, you know what I mean? So improv helps in that sense for me anyways.
Okay. Because I've never done improv, and I know last year I was thinking of taking an improv course just because I've never done it, and then the world shut down, so I never got around.
Well, they do them online, and believe it or not, I mean, I find that they're still good. I mean, you have to suspend disbelief, of course. You're talking to each other, you're both in a box or whatever, or however many people there are, so that's obviously a little bit weird or whatever. But I've been taking courses at UCB. I don't know if you know those guys.
No.
they're probably the most famous improv school. They were started by geez, I forget their names right now, but the two women from SNL. They wrote Bridesmaids.
Oh,
Tina Fey, and geez, I forget her
yeah,
name right now.
Yeah, I know who you mean.
Anyways,
Kristen Wiig,
no, actually, Tina Fey didn't start it. It's her.
Amy Poehler.
Yeah, Amy Poehler. Yeah,
Okay.
Amy Poehler and two men started UCB in New York City in the mid '90s, I want to say, or late '90s, mid to late '90s, and they and I'm taking courses with that school right now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, on all online, and it's actually the courses are primarily out of LA.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Hmm.
Okay. How does it? How would that work online improv? Is it just instead of being all in the same room, you get your premise and you work it out?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
I think for the most part, people ignore the fact that somebody's calling it, they got their kitchen in behind and another person has in their bedroom. You know what I mean? Like that's just their personal. People are like, I have a background here. Like people just ignored that part for them. Generally, I would say, and it's kind of more just conceptual, right? Like you're like, oh, we're husband and wife, and we have a different background, and obviously we're not beside each other, but theoretically we're beside each other. Do you know what I mean? Like
Okay. I see.
kind of like
I
that.
see.
I find it's pretty good. I've taken actually quite a few classes during the pandemic, online improv stuff.
Oh, cool. That's very cool. Because I know like lots of people have been like with all this free time. They say like learning different things and trying out different things. Do you feel that your comedy has changed since we've been in lockdown?
Um, it's interesting. I mean, I think that I'll say this, that I've probably doubled or even almost tripled my material during this period.
Mhm.
I find that I don't know. I've gotten lucky to fall into certain open mics or certain shows that I like and that I feel comfortable in. So I've done those things a lot, and because I do them a lot, I'm the kind of person I kind of think like, oh, I have to. That person heard my material last time, so I got to do something new. You know what I mean? So I do that. So I don't. No, I don't think that I've changed my way in a sense, but I've just kind of become um, more instinctual in a sense, I suppose,
Okay.
with my with what I'm doing.
Yeah. So have you done a lot of online open mic shows?
Oh my God, I on average I'm doing between 17 and 22 comedy shows a month
Wow. That's
at the
good.
moment.
That's good.
Is,
Yeah,
is
I
that a
thought
lot?
I was
I
doing a
don't
lot.
actually. I don't know how many doing.
Pardon me?
How many would you do?
I do at least not as many as you, but I would do at least two a week, I think.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah. I like doing them. I like doing them, you know.
yeah.
And I
Some
find yeah,
yeah,
I find it interesting because especially if you're doing a show like outside of your usual market, say with comics you don't know, you
yeah,
know, different cities, different countries, I found that I like it taught me things. It taught me like how to like write my jokes to not to be so narrow, say on my focus of my jokes
right.
that because I remember being in a position where one of my jokes I was like, I don't know if they'll get it just because it was
Right.
too Canada specific, you know? And just like how with some of their like this was in an American room and some of their jokes went right over my head because I didn't know like the details or the nitty-gritty of what made up their jokes. So that I was like, oh yeah, maybe I should, there's still things that are universal,
Yeah,
that so I have that in mind now when I write jokes. So
yeah.
I find it very helpful.
Well, yeah. I think there's been for me a lot of benefits, right? Like that's like why I said, like, first of all, I'm taking those improv classes, which I would have never been able to do because I can't go to New York City or LA,
Right.
obviously, for an extended period of time.
3 times a week or something.
Yeah, like I can't do that. So, but, and then like you're saying, like what I found interesting is that you can play different places and you can see like, does this thing play to other people? Like, for example, I've actually, I don't know if this would be true for everyone, but as we've gone through this period in Toronto, I'm going to talk about Toronto specific, where they've kind of relaxed the quarantine or the lockdown, and then kind of rolled it back, and kind of vice back and forth a little bit. Mm-hmm. There was a time where I kind of developed it online, and it worked well. And then I think a lot of people would argue like, well, it's online, it's not the same, this kind of thing. And then I went in person, and I've actually done some of that material, and it worked just as equally well, in person. So I'm fairly confident. And then of course, like, and I think you were kind of getting at that, like I did that same material, like in a predominantly LA room, or like, or New York, and you're like, oh, it kind of feels to some extent validating to be like, oh yeah, like it plays in Toronto. How would it play in LA? Well, I kind of know, to some extent.
Yeah. Exactly.
Not 100% the same.
That's a good feeling.
Is that?
Yeah, that's a good feeling too. That it's like, okay, it works. It works in different places. It doesn't just work where I am. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's a good. I have a sense that when you go on the road, that's probably one of the things that you get from it, right? Like you get that sort of being like, yeah, I'm not, like you said, not just where I live, but I can go to Calgary, or I can go to Vancouver, or I don't know, Chicago, or wherever. Mm-hmm. And I know that certain things, like you said, they're not necessarily regional, that they're more broad, and that they're going to hit, and so exactly. That it feels good. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And I found that when, especially after the first lockdown, when we first opened up here in Ottawa, that I felt like I hit the ground running.
Right.
When I got to perform live, and because I wasn't rusty, because I'd been performing all along. I just had to get used to the plexiglass. That was weird.
Well, yeah, I have a sense that what happens is that, I certainly agree that you can get bad habits online, and I've done them, and I see people, like, for example, people are reading their jokes because the jokes are literally right in front of them, if they're on the computer, that kind of thing. So that certainly happens. And also, the dynamic is different in person than it is, But I'll say this, that I don't know about yourself, but I've gone through periods where I've played clubs or venues where the lighting on the comedian is very bright, so you cannot see the audience, mm-hmm. and then going to a bar where you can see everyone, and you can see them reacting or not,
Yeah.
And that if you're doing either one of those two a lot, when you switch to the other one, you're like, holy Jesus, because if you're if you're at a place where you can't see anyone, it kind of doesn't matter where you look, because you can't see anyone, you know what I mean? Like, so you don't have to worry about that in that sense, right? You don't have to be like, oh, I'll look over their heads, or I'll look, or whatever, you don't have to think about that, because you look out, you can see like the first row, and that's it,
Yeah, and that's it.
Whereas if you play like in a bar and you can see everyone, and if it kind of affects you where you're looking at a few tables and no one's laughing, and normally people laugh a lot, then that could impact. So I feel like the transition from online to offline, or like in person, is similar to those. If you play one of those all the time, like it just takes a little bit of adjustment, but it is good to at least be doing it. You're still in the flow, right?
Mm-hmm,
more so than doing nothing.
Exactly. Because I know for myself, I didn't want, because we still don't know how long all of these things are going to last. And I know that I didn't want to be like, oh, well, it's been 2 years since I performed live, or since I performed, I didn't want to, even if it was, okay, it's 2 years since I performed live in front of an audience. I didn't want it to be, it's 2 years since I performed at all.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? I wanted to at least try and keep the momentum going, and keep writing, and still work out jokes and things like that. Still keep
that's
it
what happened
going.
with me. Like I told you, I kind of took that break, if you want to call it, is that life just, I was like, I went and I lived in Australia for a year, did the working holiday visa.
Oh, wow.
And while I was there, I didn't really, I don't know. I didn't get into the groove. There was places where they did stand up and stuff, but I just didn't get in the groove of doing it. So like for a year, I didn't do it. And then when I came back, something else happened, and then it kind of just like it just kind of becomes more the habit that you're not doing it versus doing it. You know what I mean?
Right.
And
Right.
so, yeah, it's kind of like what you're saying, right? At least if you're doing some version of it, you're doing something, and then it's easier to kind of continue that, even though maybe you move from online to offline. Then, of course, at that
Right.
point.
Right.
But I
Because
tend
you
to
won't
think
have
it's
that
something
big
will
ramp
continue.
to get back into it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think something's going to continue offline. I don't know in which way.
You think we'll still continue doing like Zoom shows?
Well, I don't know. Maybe they're not shows per se, but maybe there's more streaming from clubs. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
like there's that kind of thing. I think there is some appetite to see like something that's like relevant comedy wise, that's kind of stand up, versus having to go to a club that maybe you can't have access to, or it's for whatever reason, right? Health reasons, or you're
Right.
it's too far from wherever you live, like
Exactly.
so I
Because
don't know,
the
I think
thing
there's,
is, like,
there's something there.
yeah, because I think there are people who do want to go. Because I know some of these people who want to go to comedy shows, but they're not ready to go into a closed environment.
Oh yeah,
You
yeah,
know?
yeah. Are
That
they
they
open in
want to-
Ottawa?
We're opening up. I think.
Okay.
I think as of Wednesday, the 16th.
Right.
I think, Tuesday or Wednesday. I think we're still very restricted, but they're going to be opening up again.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think it's still in like Orange, which is, I think, 50 people max. And I know we'll be starting shows at 7 or 7:30, and like got to be done by like 9 or 9:30 because everyone's got to be out by 10 or something like that. But
Right,
super restricted still, but at least open. You know what I mean? At least open.
Yeah.
But yeah, so this is what we're coming out of the third lockdown.
I think so. Yeah.
And because I think it's been a little different in Toronto. You guys have been like full lockdown since September, right? You opened up a little bit and then
November. I actually
November?
produced.
Okay.
I actually produced a few live shows, October and November. Sorry, September, August, September, and October. I produced live shows,
okay.
like
Okay.
in person.
Oh, good. Yeah, I know I did a lot. I did a lot of stuff in August, September, and October. Because
Yeah.
I was like, I want to do as much as I can because who knows when we're going to get shut down again, sort of
Yeah,
thing.
exactly. Well, my daughter, like I said before, I have a 10-year-old daughter. They're going back to school on Tuesday, the 16th.
Ah, okay. I think kids went back this week in
Okay.
Ottawa, at least. Yeah. I don't have kids, so I really don't know. I just know one of my colleagues was like, thank God they're going back, sort of thing.
For us, it's not. It hasn't been too bad for us,
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
So, like, what or who are your comic influences?
Oh my goodness. Oh, I'm going to say something that's controversial, but I saw him years ago. Joe Rogan was at the Comedy Works in 1993. My goodness, no one, or probably 94. No one knew him at that point. This is pre everything. This is, I think,
Yeah.
he was only 3 years into stand up.
Okay.
So hilarious, so hilarious. I loved his style. I like John Oliver. I mean, I'm sure you've seen sort of my like what I do. I like when it's longer bits. I like it when it's like longer. I find it difficult sometimes when you have a stand up and they talk for 10 minutes and they've gone through 30 topics. I'm like, Jesus, I can't keep up. Like, what? We're talking about something again? You know what I mean? Or you go to a show and everybody's doing 3 minutes. I'm like, oh my God, I'm just getting used to the person 4 people ago. You know what I mean? Like, oh my God, like this is a different point of view now. Can we slow it down a little bit? Like, you know what I mean?
I know. It's just like whip. It's like,
You're like, Jesus, like it's funny, but I don't know who's who. I don't know what's what, So generally speaking, I don't really have like, like George Carlin, that kind of thing, right? Like even like a lot of the older like Richard Pryor,
Yeah.
I mean, he's amazing, right? Even back to Lenny Bruce, some of those older comics, but even a lot of the younger comics now, I kind of, yeah, I don't really kind of idolize anyone at the moment, I'd say.
Okay. Okay. What made you decide, or like what did something happen, or what made you decide like, hey, I'd like to try stand up, or I'd like to try improv?
Well, like when I first started, I was always, when I was a kid, people used to always say to me, "Oh, you're so funny. Like you should do stand up. Like have you ever thought of doing stand up? This kind of thing." And when I was a kid, I did tap dancing when I was a kid, when I was like 12 or whatever. And then I played the violin since I was 5. So I would perform in old people's homes when I was, or like that's what they call them at the time, like seniors, retirement places.
Yeah.
Anyways, and then when I was in high school, I was in a couple plays. And then, yeah, by the time I got to Cégep and then university, people used to always say that to me, like, "Oh, you're so funny. You should try stand up.
Yeah.
Oh, have you ever tried?"
So you grew up in Montreal?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, me too.
Yeah. I grew up on the South Shore.
Me too. I grew up in Chattagee.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, so what high school did you go to?
I went to Sacred Heart. I went to the private school up on the hill at the top of Atwater.
Oh, okay. Because I don't know if you know, I went to school in Saint-Hubert, like McDonald-Cartier.
Okay, I know that school.
Yeah, is a big. My dad taught at that school as well.
Okay, and my parents were teachers as well.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, they taught elementary school though.
Oh, okay. Well, my mom was an elementary school teacher, grade 1.
Oh, wow. My mom taught grade 3, and my dad taught grade 6. But 5 and 6, if there was a rough class coming up, he'd get them in grade 5 and take them again in grade 6.
Nice.
And straighten them out a little bit.
Nice. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. What was I saying?
What people would tell you, like in CEGEP.
Oh, yeah. So then I don't know. I was going to Concordia University, and Comedy Works is just down the road there, and there was an ad, and it said that they were doing and when I graduated university, there wasn't jobs around much. It was a little bit of a recession. Pretty heavy recession. What year was that? It was like 92, 93.
Okay.
Around there. This was pretty. And
I went to Concordia too.
Yeah, I was like, well, what am I going to do? I saw this ad that they were doing a stand-up course, and or class, and I thought, oh, sure, why? Like, I'll try that, I'll take this class, and so I did that. And then actually, while the class was going on, I wrote. It was all one-liners back then, and that's all I wrote, and that's why I was like, geez, I did 5-minute set, and in those 5-minute set, I did 50 one-liners. Can you imagine? I was like. This isn't going to be sustainable. You know what I mean? Like, how am I going to how will I ever build up to half an hour? This is nuts. I'll never be able to
one-liners in half an hour.
Oh my goodness. I'll never remember them, let alone like, how will I write them? Anyways. And so, but I went to McGill. McGill had a contest. My dad was teaching at McGill at night. My dad saw a posting that they were doing an amateur stand-up competition at McGill. Anyway, so I went there and I won it.
Oh wow!
Yeah, it was a pretty big deal. You know what I mean? Like, it was the first time I'd ever been on stage, or I'd taken the class. It was like halfway through the class or something, and so I'd written some in the class, and the teacher had helped me, or however it worked, And then I'd gone to this thing, and then from there I just kind of. And back then I used to always go watch all the headliners and get in free at the Comedy Works and then, of course, when JFL would come to town, all the, my God, Andy Kindler. I don't know if you know who Andy Kindler is.
No, I don't remember that name. Doesn't ring a bell.
But back then, like they had like Joe. I mentioned Joe Rogan, but also Everybody Loves Raymond. Ray Romano.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Was not known. I think his sitcom started in 95, something around like that.
Something like that, yeah.
And I remember seeing him. He was hilarious as well, like so good. I don't know if you know Derek Edwards.
Yes, I love Derek Edwards.
Derek Edwards
is so funny.
Is an amazing Canadian comic.
Yeah, he's one of my favorites.
Barry Kennedy. I don't know if you know Barry Kennedy.
Barry Kennedy.
He's actually Gordon Pincett's son.
Oh, okay.
And Barry Kennedy, I mean, the same as Derek Edwards. I mean, same levels. So hilarious. They were two that I remember back then watching. And Al Lubell, I don't know if you know him.
The name sounds familiar.
Al Lubell. Actually, I connected with Al Lubell about a year and a half ago, and we've spoken a few times.
Okay.
And he was there as well. Anyways, yeah. So that's kind of how it started for me.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Did you say your first set was a competition that you won?
Mm-hmm.
Were you nervous, or were you just more excited?
It's interesting. You know, I don't really get nervous per se, but it's kind of almost for the opposite reason than people think. It's not because I'm full of myself. It's because I think that no one's paying attention. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think that I literally think no one talks about me because I literally think they have better things to do. Do you know what I mean? Like, just not because like I'm down on myself or anything, but just because I literally think people have other things
that their minds are occupied with other things.
Yeah, because there's a lot going on in the world and in people's lives. So yeah, so when I do these things, I kind of think that people won't remember, even if I did badly. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So like, in a way, the pressure's off. Not to say that I don't, like, I care. I get apprehensive sometimes a little bit, I suppose, you know, but I wouldn't call it like super nervous, you know?
Okay. Yeah, because I don't, except for the very first time I did it, I rarely feel nervous.
Yeah.
You know?
I think that's healthy.
Yeah. I'm more excited. It's like,
yeah, exactly.
I can't wait to get up there, but to the point where I'm like super nervous or feeling ill or anything like that, I think maybe only right before the very first time I did it.
That's a shame that people feel like that, you know?
Yeah.
It kind of robs them of the experience.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Because I remember that first time I was so nervous until I got to the stage. And then I felt very at ease. I felt at home. You know, it felt right, you know?
Yeah.
So,
how did you get started?
I had wanted to do it since I was like 15. But I was too afraid. I was too afraid. And then I know if I had told my parents at like 17, I want to do stand up, they would have been like, no, no, you're not doing that. So yeah, so I put it off until I actually bit the bullet and did it. I took a course in August of 2019.
Oh, nice.
And then
where is that at? Like Yuck Yucks or?
It was at Absolute Comedy.
Oh, right.
Absolute Comedy. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I had signed up for like a similar course in Toronto. I think it was from Absolute, and like filled out the form online and never sent it in. I did that a whole bunch of times. So I was just too, I was just too nervous.
Who gave the course there in Ottawa?
Pierre Bro.
Oh, yeah. I remember. I lived in Ottawa for, maybe 6 months. I lived, I have an aunt and uncle who used to live in, I don't know where they are exactly now. They lived in Hull.
Okay, that's on the Quebec side, yeah.
Yeah, and
Gatineau.
Yeah. Well, I lived in Point Gatineau, which is probably all Gatineau now, right? Like they had it separated, and I lived there for a little bit, and I would go to the Yuck Yucks there. I forget what street it's on there. And Pierre Bro was, I think it was just maybe 94, actually, something like that.
Okay.
So long ago. I mean, and Pierre Bro was more or less starting out, I'd say.
Yeah, because I think it used to be Yuck Yucks used to be at a different location,
right?
Than where it is its present location. I think it's on Elgin now. It used to be somewhere else, but I don't remember. Or I don't know where it was before.
Yeah. But I've been there a few times in the other. I haven't been there since.
Okay. Yeah. So it was like one of those things where I was like, it keeps bubbling up. I just need to do it and just get it out of my system. Like I really took it as like a bucket list thing. Like I'll do it, I'll get it out of my system, and I'll be able to like move on with my life. And I was like, when I got on stage.
I know that didn't happen. That's good. You won some competitions as well, didn't you?
Yeah, I was in one competition, the Yuck Yucks summer competition, and I made it to the semifinals.
Well, that's really good.
Yeah, so I was excited with that. Yeah,
Yeah, a lot of
I made it to
people.
the
How many
semifinals.
people in that? Like, how many people compete in that?
Oh, I think there were about 12 preliminary rounds.
Wow.
So you had to get through your preliminary round. And so it was, I think each round was 6 to 8 comics and 3 went through.
Wow. That's
So
good
I
then.
remember I came in my round, I came second of third, and then the quarterfinal, I came first and made it to the semifinal, but I didn't advance to the finals.
That's really pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
So
really
that
good.
was like within my first year. So that was
That's great.
pretty good. Yeah. It was fun. It was fun. I'd never done any kind of, I'd like to do more competitions. That was my first one.
Yeah, yeah.
So it was fun. I know you've done a lot of competitions. You do a lot of
Well,
competitions.
I like doing festivals more than competitions, and I think sometimes I've done a couple competitions without realizing I thought they were festivals. You know what I mean? Well, because they call them that. I mean, they can be competitions, of course. You know, they could be
Hmm.
either one, but um, yeah. I mean, I mean, obviously, this summer I did the U.S. comedy contest. I knew that was a competition because
Okay.
it's called that.
Yeah.
But I but I but I did a I like doing. I did the Salem Comedy Festival. That was not a competition; it was just a festival. I really enjoyed that one. I've had some good times doing like Zoom shows. I did a 50-minute set one time on a Zoom
Wow.
show. It was great.
Wow. That's
I
cool.
loved it. There
Yeah.
wasn't that
No,
many
they're
people
fun.
there.
I find like I'm doing one right after this. I'm doing a show.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah. And
doing,
so am I. I
yeah,
don't.
it's so fun.
Yeah, I don't have an issue with them. You know, they're different. It's not the
Hmm.
same, right? It's like reading a book and reading the newspaper or reading something online. It's not. They're not identical either, right? I mean,
Right.
there's pros and cons to all of those, you know.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. No, I've always like cuz I know the very first online show that I did, it was on Facebook Live. So that's just one way. Like you're not getting any feedback or anything. And I did 30 minutes. And I remember I
Holy,
was exhausted after
that's
because
great.
it's like because there's also a delay. And
Right.
so I might see an LOL pop up like 15 seconds later or something. So I was just like throwing all these jokes out, not knowing if they're hitting or not. Just, being like, okay, I've done these live. These usually get a response. So I'm just going to assume that people
But I
are
kind of feel
laughing.
like it feels very similar to like if you were a DJ and you were alone in the booth and you were being a DJ in a radio, it's really the same, right? Like that person there has no clue. The feedback or is not hearing anything, of course, from the audience. I mean, how
Right.
obviously it's impossible. Now, obviously, if you're doing a morning show or any show on the radio and you have other people there, there's obviously you're feeding off of those folks. But I
Hmm.
find that's how it is when you do a lot of these Zoom shows where comics come, I feel like with a kind of a different attitude, right, or a different perspective because they're like, hey, I kind of be more supportive in this sense, right? Because this
Yeah.
person and I want them to do the same for me, right? So
Hmm.
I think there's a different philosophy in in person. People are like, they're on stage, fuck them, like I'm over here in the back, whatever, because the
Yeah.
audience will listen to them or whatever, right? So
Exactly. Yeah, because we're notorious for, you're reviewing your own stuff. You're in a different world. You're not really paying attention to
yeah,
what's
yeah,
happening on
exactly.
stage versus, yeah, in the Zoom room, you know, we tend to pay a little more attention in the room. Yeah,
Yeah.
you know. But no, I've enjoyed them. I've had a lot of fun doing them. I always urge and encourage comics to do it at least once, maybe twice. Just get a feel of it and
Well, I think
learn
there's just
something
like a lot of
new.
people. Oh, you know that I'm doing. I think I have you booked, right? I'm doing 50
Yeah.
shows in March.
Yes. Yes. I
Producing.
think you have me on two. Two. I think you booked
Yeah,
me on
yeah.
two of your
I'm
shows.
producing 50 shows exactly. And the thing is, like some people I contact and they're like, well, "I'm not into it," and I'm like, "Yeah, I get it." And
Hmm.
it's just like open mics, right? Like I don't know about yourself, but I find like some of these open mics in person are like I've only done it one time, and it was like you get 25 people, and then you sign up. My God, I went up. The room was packed. and there was actually a few audience members. It was pretty good. And then I went, I think, 23rd out of 25.
Oh wow.
And by the time I got there, there were 4 people left.
Oh
You know
God.
what I mean? Like,
That's long.
you know what I mean? Like, you wait all that time.
Yeah.
But also at the same time, like, I did do John joke one night, like one small bit that actually works really well. So I did get that out of it. I'm not saying it's a waste. I'm just saying, like, I find that even when you do open mics, some can be really good or some can be bad. And sometimes, like in that case, it was a hard night and there was not many people in the audience, but I still had a good time when I was performing.
Yes.
So it can still be good, you know. And then, but at the same time, it can be horrific. I did a Zoom show 2 nights ago. It was the worst one I've ever done so far.
Really?
It was just so. It was just the vibe wasn't good. And everything about it that you could imagine wasn't. But that's the same thing. I've done shows here in Toronto where I've had 60 people in the audience, and it's just it was weird. You know what I mean? Like, the vibe was all weird.
Yeah.
Somehow it wasn't good. I wasn't good. Whatever, right? And then I do a show like the very next night, similar material, and everyone is killing. You know?
Yeah.
Same.
Yeah.
So that can happen live as well, right? And it can happen with big crowds and not big ones, whether they're mics or actually paid shows. It happens as well, right? So
it's true. We can't predict we can't predict who's gonna be there, you know, or what the reactions are gonna be. Yeah.
Well, exactly. What's the state of mind of people? How are they feeling? Is it predominantly sort of, for some reason, it's predominantly one group of people kind of, you know, it could be like you could have a large percentage of people who are not laughers. They're just people who don't laugh.
Yeah.
And that's impacting everyone else. Or you could have a large group of people that, my God, they laugh at a drop of a hat. You know what I mean? Like,
they laugh at anything.
Yeah, like you have those people too, right? Like you have kind of everyone. And so you don't know what the composition of the audience is going to be. And like, so it's a crapshoot, right? And, you know, even if you're selling tickets, you have no way of knowing that.
Right. You know, and the thing I treat the shows just like a regular show. I think that's a regular show.
I think that's the important part. I think that what I was saying before about bad habits, I think that some people don't really do that. And I think if you don't do that, you can do yourself a disservice. And then when you go do like in-person shows, you could have picked up some bad habits, right? Of doing things like being more sloppy and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah.
It's a dangerous sort of trap to fall into.
It's true. 'Cause like you're in the comfort of your own home. It's just like working from home. Like I know I've developed some bad habits with working from home. You know, like in my pajamas, like all day sort of thing on the couch, like working from the couch instead of at a desk or so, just like in the lazy boy with my feet up sort of thing. It's like, what am I going to do? That's what
my daughter said one morning. When I put on, I didn't have time to adjust. I was having a meeting right at 9. So I threw on like my shirt, you know, with my pajamas or whatever on, you know? And my daughter was like, "Oh, life hack. Good life hack, Daddy." Exactly.
Business from the waist up.
Exactly.
Party from the waist down. You know?
That's right. You can get away with that. So,
yeah, for sure. Exactly. So that's one thing I think that's like helped me with it and has made it like enjoyable is just treating it like an actual show, because it is a show. It's an actual show.
Oh yeah,
but treating it the same way as if I were physically going to a venue to perform.
Well, I try and treat even like in person, like open mics, right? If I'm going to go to an open mic, I want to obviously there's certain elements that you can't treat it like a real show in a sense, because you're doing completely new material and maybe you haven't memorized everything, like those some aspects that way, obviously, but for the most part, I want to try and, like you said, treat it the same, open, strong, you know, and when I say that, I mean, like, you know, be in the right mindset, think about things in the right way, be professional. And like you're saying, like I played a lot of sports when I was a kid, and you know, and I played football, and when you play football, I don't know if you know this, but it's like you're in the army when you play like tackle football, you know what I mean? Like NFL style, you know? And they always, like in sports, generally they talk about, you know, you practice like you play because you're trying to get good habits. If you're not practicing well, then how can you expect now to kind of do something different when you're in the game, right? Because you haven't practiced that way.
Exactly.
You know, so it's kind of like, try and live by that as much as possible, you know?
Yeah, me too. Me too. Me too. And I look at it as, even if I'm going to a page show or an open mic or a Zoom thing, I'm like, people are taking their time
Yeah,
to
exactly.
come and watch, and they want to be entertained, and they want to laugh. So I keep that in mind. And
Well, and plus that person may be the only time, the first time they see you.
right.
And
Exactly. That
so
could
if
be the first time they see you. That could
it's the
be
first
their
impression, right?
only opportunity, only bit of free time that they have, sort
Yeah.
of thing, you know? So I try to keep those things in mind, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm the
So
same
we're
way.
gonna wrap stuff up, but
Okay.
I like to end the show with asking some silly questions.
Okay.
So I have
for
a
it.
list of 62 questions.
Nice.
So we might do two. We might do 2 or 3. So I'm
Okay.
going to ask you to pick a number between 1 and 62, and I'll ask you the corresponding question.
Oh my God. Let's go for 52 and 62.
52 and 62. Okay. Okay. So 52. What's the best backhanded compliment you've heard or can think of on the spot?
Oh, well, last night, a comic posted put a poster on Facebook for a show that she's doing in person. And the photo I said, is this a poster of comedians with photos that were taken of them 10 years ago? Because the woman didn't look, it didn't, and then she wrote, no, this photo was taken of me like in July of 2019. And I said, flattery lightning. Like the lightning was very flattering. It didn't look like her. I mean, it looked like her, but it's like if I posted a photo of me 10 years ago, you'd be like, that's not him at the moment. You know what I mean? But anyways, I thought it was a good time. She thought it was funny too.
Is that something like that happened to me? Because last October of 19, I went and I did this, which another bucket list thing. It was like a glamour photo shoot.
Oh yeah.
And one picture that I absolutely love, I got it enlarged and I have it on the wall. And when I moved into this apartment, my landlord was here, and he was like, "Who's that?" And I was like,
Nice.
"That's me." And he was like, "Oh."
Exactly. Well, you can look.
Like, get out.
I find women more than men to some extent. Like, you know, like when women wear makeup, especially like around the eyes, right? Like you can make the eyes look like makeup when it's done well, right? Can make the eyes look bigger or smaller or even whatever, like slightly different. And men aren't very clever to start off with. So I mean, you know, like if you do that, a guy's like, oh my goodness, this is a completely different person. You know what I mean? Like, so maybe that's all she was. She was maybe wearing like the lighting was different.
The lighting,
and maybe a little bit of different makeup maybe. And so I thought it was a good time. She enjoyed it too.
That's funny.
Yeah. I would only say that to someone I know, of course.
Yeah.
She knew it was in good fun.
Okay. And so you said the other one was 62?
Yeah, 62.
Okay. So 62. If you had to choose between going naked or having your thoughts appear in thought bubbles above your head for everyone to read, which would you choose?
Thought bubbles.
The thought bubbles?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm okay with how I think. I'm pretty transparent just as it is, so I don't think I would be too embarrassed or bothered by anything. And again, I also remember I said earlier, like I believe that people would see that, and they wouldn't talk about me. They wouldn't even, you know, even if it was something like fairly, like maybe inappropriate or something, they wouldn't be like, oh no, you know what I mean? They wouldn't even talk about me. So
I think I would take the thought bubbles too, because even though I'm quiet, I'm pretty straightforward. So it wouldn't be shocking.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think it would be any shock to anyone to read my thought bubbles. Maybe for some people, but I think in general, it wouldn't be anything like.
Well, you know what? You know what's interesting with me. So I'm not like super shy, because I have a theory that I think in general most people are shy, but some people figure out how to kind of deal with it and get out of that. Mm-hmm. But I feel like shy people, man, it's not because they're not thinking. There's a lot of thinking going on.
Yeah, they just don't say it. It's true.
They're just, it's just not coming out. There's just as much thinking as the person who like talks all the time, right? The amount of thinking, maybe it's more, who knows, depending on the person, but it's those two things have nothing to do with each other. The amount of thinking and the amount of talking you're doing.
Yeah.
There's no, I don't think there's a correlation there. You know what I mean? But I think a lot of people believe there is. They believe, oh, this person, it doesn't talk a lot, so like they're quiet, meaning that they're not thinking of anything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, or they're not like, or they're not thinking like bad things or like, you know, controversial things. They're thinking just as many things or a varied number of things as someone who talks all the time. You know what I mean?
Right. Someone who it's the same rate as someone who expresses themselves. They're just not expressing it. They're keeping it contained.
Exactly, but they have the same amount, and I think that people who talk a lot forget that part. You know what I mean? And I think a lot other people are like, oh yeah, well this person here is quiet. You know, yeah, well they're still thinking. They're still alive. They're a person. You know what I mean? They still have thoughts.
They're still brain function.
Yeah, so they're still thinking about things, and they're having opinions about you. They're just not telling you.
Exactly. They're just keeping it to themselves.
Yeah, and that's why, you know, like that's a big distinction I find between Americans and Canadians. Canadians will think awful things about other people, and so will Americans. But Americans will say it, and then people will think we're nice, and we'll be like, "Well, I kind of agree with that American guy, but yes,
I just didn't say it." I use my inside voice.
Exactly. We just don't say anything, you know?
Yeah, we don't say anything. It's true. That's
so
true.
I think that's the big sort of distinction, right? We're kind of smart enough in a way to be like, well,
yeah, I'm gonna keep that inside.
Yeah, let's see how this plays out first before.
To be said.
Exactly. Let me see how this plays out first before I sort of divulge. Everything about what I'm thinking first.
Exactly. It was a little bit of, what is it, strategizing or something?
Exactly. And I think that for Canadians generally that's built in, right? Where you're like, well, okay.
Yeah, we assess it first.
Yeah, let's do some assessment before we kind of spill the beans, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think that's smart.
It is smart. Yeah, exactly. Well, the Americans are more, they're more open because they believe that they've been fed, like, you know, this business that they're the best country in the world and so on. And not to say that it's a horrible place, but so they feel like they're, and also I've just learned recently, like, it's a big thing there that from the politicians anyways, about being a beacon of democracy and all this kind of thing. It's part of their mission statement. Yeah, it's part of, so they believe that doing, like, speaking up and saying those things, like, why it's kind of needed in general is because you want to sort of, how do you lead? Like, it's very difficult to lead by saying nothing, you know what I mean? Like,
right.
And that's kind of how Canada does. So that's why we don't lead, because we're kind of like, let them go first and then we'll follow and we'll say something that's accepted. You know what I mean? So we don't lead, right? So there's pros and cons to both of those, right? But you get yourself more in trouble when you haven't. We're more strategic, like you said.
Yeah, because we're not like the bull in the china shop. We're like, okay, let's see how this plays out.
Exactly, exactly. But then again, you can't with that kind of thing. You more often than not, you can be a leader because you're kind of waiting for someone else to make the first move, right? So
exactly.
So that's why we sort of like, oh, the Americans, you've gone in and it's safe. Good, we'll come in and be peacekeepers. We'll come in. Sure, we'll join the party.
Keep it safe.
yeah. It's already safe. Yeah, we'll come in and keep it safe. We'll keep what you guys made safe. Oh, it's not safe? Then we don't want to go. We're good. We don't agree with this. We're just gonna hang back. We're gonna
hang back for a safe spot somewhere else.
Exactly. And we're like, oh, the Americans, so silly going in. You know what I mean? And then we would have gone in too, but we're too scared or too, you know. Yeah, you know, you go first. You go. You go into the water. You tell me if it's hot. Tell me if it's good. You go in for a couple hours. Tell me if
there's sharks in there.
Yeah. Then oh, it's good. Okay, great. Yeah. And then if he gets killed by the shark, we're like, what an idiot. What a dummy.
He shouldn't have gone in there.
Why would he do that? Why did he make that choice? How silly. Oh, he was American. Well, how silly. And yeah, we're the ones who are too scared to go in. You know what I mean? Yeah, there's pros and cons to those ideas. So.
Yeah, because that's the thing. There's a place for each. You know, there's a place for each way of thinking. But like you said, like, you can't lead leading involves like taking chances and
Yeah, exactly.
like
You gotta
stepping into the unknown and stuff like that. Where
yeah, exactly.
we're more cautious.
Well, yeah, exactly. Anyways, oh, cool. Where'd you get all these questions?
I just Googled like silly interview
Oh, nice.
questions and stuff like that. So I curated them from a whole bunch of different sites, and
Nice.
yeah, some of them are pretty funny. So I
got asked one time at an interview if I was a tree, what kind of tree would I be? Or if I was a dog, what I'm serious. I was asked those questions. And then on the dog one, I thought I was like a lab, because a lab is very obedient and so on. Apparently that was a horrible answer.
Really?
I thought that was positive. That felt positive to me.
Yeah, I'd say it was positive. I've had labs and they're like good dogs, and I know when they're puppies they're bad, but
I don't know.
Overall, they're good dogs.
It seemed I felt very good about it like in the moment, and then later on I looked at it online. Apparently that's a horrible answer. I can't remember which dog. What's a good answer? What's that?
Why is it a horrible answer?
Well, because you're obedient and you just do whatever. So you're back to this. Like, you're not a leader, right? Like, you won't take initiative. You'll just wait for other people to tell you what to do, and you won't kind of do things on your own, and you won't go out of your way, and you're just waiting for someone else to point to you in the right direction, and that kind of thing, right?
Oh, okay.
And I was like, well,
I think I would be either a poodle or like a German Shepherd.
Okay, why poodle?
Like a poodle, because I'm very picky. I'm very particular.
Oh, yeah.
Like
poodles
I
are
like to be pampered.
You know what I love with dogs is when instead of saying difficult, they'll just say like, "Oh, that's a smart dog." You know what I mean? Like intelligence is equal to being difficult. You know what I mean? Because they're like, well, the dog won't want to do that because it's too smart. You mean, no, the dog is picky. You know what I mean? Like, has nothing to do with intelligence, anyways. But that's how they equate it, right? And what's the other? Oh, German Shepherd. Why German
Shepherd? Yeah. I think just because they could be very good dogs or they can be vicious.
Nice.
Yeah,
so you could be either. You could be very good.
Either or. It's like
nice.
I'm usually nice, but if you push me too far, you poke me, I'll
Nice. That's funny.
So thank you so much for
thank you
joining me today. This was a lot of fun. Where can people find you, and what shows do you have coming up that you'd like to let our listeners and viewers know about?
So in March, I'm going to be doing 50 shows in 3 weeks, starting March 8th to 27th, and shows are going 7 o'clock or 7, 9, and 11. It's mostly stand-up, but there are a few improv shows. There's a few character shows, so people coming in as characters, like sketch, but kind of like solo sketch in a sense. And then, online. I'm Luke Lynndale everywhere. So Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. Oh, I got a great TikTok channel. Got 3 videos up.
I haven't done TikTok. I don't know how to do
destroying TikTok at the moment. No, I'm not. No.
I don't know TikTok.
That's about it.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining me.
Well, thank you.
And hope to meet you in person soon. One day.
Yes. Let's meet in person.
If I make my way to Toronto, I'll definitely look you up, or if you come this side.
Yeah,
for sure.
Definitely. Yeah.
So thank you so much.
All right. Thanks,
for joining
Simone.
me today.
Okay.
So thank you, everyone. See you next time.
Bye now.